Hey everybody, thank you for joining us. As always, please feel free to ask any questions along the way. And if you think you might like to come on the show yourself, please feel free to get in contact. My details on the channel's About page. Next week, we're talking with Jason Kuhn, but today it's a Guy Dupont. Hello, Guy.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Guy, as you said. I am a software developer, maker, audio engineer, artist, internet time spender, seltzer drinker. I've been trying to include that in all my introductions.
Just get it clear. Yeah.
feels important.
Nice. So we're talking just now and start education and sort of where you grew up, inverted commas. You were saying that you started off quite heavily into the audio side of things and you didn't take a direct route to where you are today. Can you just fill us in a bit on that?
Sure. And when I say I didn't take a direct route, like in retrospect, and folks might hear this and be like, well, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. But it's never felt direct in real time. But so what happened was when I was younger, I was very into music, very into performing, recording. I had a band with my cousins that we started when we were in middle school, and we would record all our own stuff and put it on MySpace. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the first time I started clinging to technology, and more than just like as a consumer, it was something that I wanted to get into, participate, mess with. Okay. And so thankfully my parents were very supportive. They for Christmas I would get like microphones, like one I'm holding. Actually, I've actually had this microphone for a long time. So got really into that, and kind of probably middle school, high school, decided that was something I wanted to pursue pretty seriously. And I was doing a bunch of recording, local bands. My high school had a studio, which was really cool. So I got to record like the a cappella groups, stuff like that.
Did you find yourself more on the recording and the technology side of things, or were you playing instruments as well? And
it was both, but it's been a steady shift more towards the technology, mostly because like I just like was never that talented at any particular instrument.
I have to admit, I know the feeling.
yeah. And I still enjoy playing a lot, and I still I mean I don't get that much time anymore, but part of it's just that I just kept picking up new instruments too, so I never really just felt that drawn to one particular thing, and so that explains why I never got good. But yeah, so definitely drawn more towards the technology, and decided like that was maybe something I wanted to try doing professionally. And when it came time to go to college, that was an option that though my family is very, very supportive. I think we had to sit down, and it was kind of like, yeah, that seems cool. Maybe we'll have a backup plan. So, something else a little more stable, normal, whatever. And so it wasn't no, it was like yes, but like let's just look at the big picture, which I really appreciate in hindsight. But so what ended up happening was I just went to 2 schools at once. So
oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I did a 4-year degree, just like the normal college thing. Even though I bounced around within that school a whole bunch. And then at night I would go off to I got a certificate in audio production from like it was more of a trade school. It was run through Boston University. And so very different, right? Like one of them was like standard kind of liberal arts bachelor's degree, and then the other one was very hands-on, technical, not really homework, but more like we would go into the studio and do stuff.
Hands-on practical,
yeah. And that was cool. It was cool to be able to do both, and kind of, I got to meet all different people from all different backgrounds. And yeah, it was fun. It was hard. It was a lot of work, obviously, like going to 2 schools. I don't recommend that, but worked out for the most part. I was able to kind of get into a few studios in the Boston area. And the bachelor's degree paid off in that. I ended up the last degree the last degree program I kind of landed in was human development, which is basically, I joke, it's the easy part of a psych major with the easy part of a business major.
So you say you ended up in that. Did that mean you did a couple of things before?
Yeah, I bounced.
Okay.
I was an education major for a while.
Okay.
Like I was student teaching. I was very briefly a physics major because
Okay.
it makes
Yeah.
sense. Again, makes sense in retrospect. I think if I had tried the physics thing later in college, I might have been more equipped. But that didn't last very long.
Mhm.
And then landed up in human development mostly because it was the program with which all of the like hodgepodge of classes I had taken, up to that point, that was the degree where most of them kind of slotted in and actually counted for credit. So,
Oh, I see. Okay.
So,
How do I make this work, kind of thing, almost.
how do I get
Right.
out of here in time? But I'm grateful because it's kind of like majoring in HR.
Mhm.
And I think I actually got a lot out of that. I think, learning how organizations work, learning how to work with people, learning about problems you're going to face out there in the world, collaborating with people, even if it's not in a job setting, like just learning to work with people.
Mhm.
I think it was actually ended up being pretty valuable. So that was my 4-year degree. And then I was doing the audio stuff on the side, graduated, and I was working at a studio as a kind of recording engineer, part-time. So it wasn't like a full-time thing. I started as an intern, and then eventually they started feeding me like hourly sessions. I was working with a lot of students from like Berklee College of Music, which is nearby here, and doing like some commercial stuff. So the studio I worked at had connections in New York and LA, where if someone was in town filming something, because they film a lot of stuff in Boston, even though it's not a big like media town. So if they were filming and they needed like a quick session to just record some dialogue, voiceover stuff,
Mhm.
they would come to our studio, and I got to work on some cool stuff at that point.
Nice.
Yeah. Where was I supposed to be aiming with that answer? I forget.
Don't worry, we can find a new route if you like.
Yeah.
We were just talking about sort of education, and so
Yeah.
you came out of your bachelor's with a human development bachelor's, and then you moved on to, I think it was a master's. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're back on track. Thank you. I'm
That's
glad
okay.
we talked briefly before this. So what happened was, during my stint as an education major, so as a teacher, I had to pick a focus, and I had chosen a math and science focus, just because
Okay.
that aligns with kind of what I was more oriented towards. And one of the electives I got to take towards the end of that was computer science, like 101. And I took that, and I was like, oh, I should have been doing this the whole time. I
Kind of an
really
eye
like,
opener, I guess.
I
Yeah.
really latched onto it, and I basically tried to fill as many slots as I could that was probably junior year. So my junior and senior year, I tried to fill as many of my classes as I could with computer science, just electives. I was too late for me to get a full degree at that point, but
Right.
I wanted to get as many classes in as I could. And it did something to my brain. It just made everything make sense, to the point where my GPA in semesters where I took a computer science class, even if it was just one computer science class and I took 4, I took history, some human development class, whatever,
Mhm.
my entire GPA would jump. I think it was literally a full point when I took a single computer science class that semester, just because it just like ignited something,
Yeah.
it
Gave you
kept
the
me.
fulfillment and kept
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well done.
So
So
yeah,
being from
thanks.
the UK, GPA, I'm aware of it. What does a full point
Okay.
mean? What's the scale we're talking about
Yeah.
here?
A full point is, I guess, a full letter grade.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
yeah. So from a B to an A, or
Yeah.
in
Nice.
some cases a C to a B. I don't know who gets C's, but definitely not me. Um, No, but it was a significant jump for, especially for when you consider that it wasn't just that one grade. It was like all of my grades went up when I took a computer science course.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
do you think that that was like partly self-care, you know, feeling like you were doing something worthwhile and it just
Yes.
lifted your mood and
Yep.
brought your grades up as well?
And not even worthwhile, but though, I thought it was just something that I actually felt like I was, this is bad to say, but I was better at most of the class.
Okay.
It was a thing where we'd get together and do our assignments, and folks would be
Yeah.
confused. I'd be like, this makes perfect sense to me. And
Right.
that was really the first time I had felt that.
Okay.
And so it was a big ego boost. But I think in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I tried to take as many computer science classes as I could, and so I'm fast forward 2 weeks away from graduating from college. I'm working in the studio, which is great. That's what I had been pushing towards. But that was hard. That was it was late night sessions. I had just graduated from intern to like I wouldn't even say employee, but like
Somewhat
provisional.
trusted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's like, I'm looking at graduating and I'm looking at what my rent's going to cost in
Yeah.
Boston. And I was like, this is great, but I don't see how this pans out long term unless something really magical happens. So I called my very supportive parents. Literally 2 weeks before I graduated, I like woke up one morning, I called them. I was like, I think I need to get a master's degree. And this is after they had already sent me to 2 schools at once. So,
Yeah.
but very, very lucky, to have a supportive family. And they were like, that honestly sounds good and makes a lot of sense. And so I found like a post-baccalaureate program that I was able to start the following year, even though like I started in September after graduating in May.
Right.
And I applied in May.
It just all kind of worked out for you.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what was that? There was a master's. What was the topic?
Computer science. Yeah. So
Okay.
it was a post-bac in computer science that rolled into a master's.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic. Okay. And that then landed you in work as a software engineer. Is that right?
Yeah. And I actually started working full time when I was 1 semester in.
Okay.
So again, my thing up until now has kind of been doing 2 things at once. So I worked full time as a software engineer and went to school for computer science
Yeah.
simultaneously for 5 years. 4 or 5 years. Which was again very hard, but I think like the 2 things complemented each other so well that it amplified both, and again my brain was doing the right thing and was able to make it work.
Amazing. Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, as we discussed, you've got this fantastic software background, and you've been involved with technology for a long time, music tech and various other things, and that's then led you now to be doing stuff on the side. Again, you're working out of education, but you're doing your hobby, I guess, on the side.
Yep.
And that's much more electronics and physical based. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think I've always been drawn towards hardware, even going through the whole beginning of my software career. And a lot of the work I've done as a software developer was in support of a hardware product. So I have worked
Okay.
mostly doing mobile applications, so
Mhm.
Android apps, native Android apps, and I've basically written every Bluetooth low energy device that's come out in the past 10 years now has a companion app that that either you need just to do firmware updates over
Mhm.
the air, or is actually critical to the functionality of that hardware. And let me tell you, I have written a bunch of those apps now, which I enjoy. For the record, so like
Yeah.
I was my employers and mentors. Also very supportive, like saw that I had an interest in working with the physical stuff,
Mhm.
the hardware. And so I got staffed on those projects pretty frequently, and got to work for some pretty, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say, but some pretty hefty hardware companies, like names folks know.
Awesome.
And it was, again, I wasn't working directly on the hardware, but just to be, just being in those
Associated with it, and
and being in the stand-ups with all the firmware folks and the hardware folks was like, you could pick up quite a bit through osmosis. So
do you think that's kind of folded back into your hobby side of things? That
yeah,
the fact
definitely.
that you've picked up things either working with Bluetooth or just talking with, or in the meetings with hardware folks.
Yeah. So it really kicked off at the beginning of the pandemic. I had a few ideas for, like, I had gotten it, an Arduino Uno for Christmas one year because I had asked for it. I was like, I know I'm drawn to hardware. I'm not a hardware person, but I think I can make something with my, with my software background. I think I can pick stuff up. And so I got that for Christmas. And during the pandemic, that's when I picked it up and said, okay, I've got time to kill. I'm going to actually make stuff, like larger scale stuff. And yeah, I spent a lot of time on YouTube. I spent a lot of time on, do they call it Stack Overflow when it's on the hardware stuff?
As the electronics
Stack Exchange,
yeah.
Whatever it is. I spent a lot of time there, a lot of time reading, Adafruit, SparkFun. They have their amazing documentation. And yeah, I just dove in and got to work.
So what was your first project that you've shouted about publicly?
Yeah, so
rolling the mind back a bit.
Yeah, there's kind of two. I did two kind of at the same time, but
okay,
they kind of diverged a little bit. So one of them was the Wurlitzer Keynote Visualizer. That was my first, like, how do I put this? It was an order of magnitude more work, design, everything than any of the other projects I had kind of started with. And it was the first one that I put on the internet. That was key, because that helped me build a little momentum, getting feedback and sharing it. So actually, if you want to put it up, I can put my screen up. Sure. I'll show the photo of it at least.
There you go.
Yeah. So this was inspired by, there's an artist by the name of Joey Dosick who plays in my favorite band, Wolfpack, and he does solo stuff. And there's a video of him playing on an old Wurlitzer in some keyboard shop in New York. And I think NPR produced the video, but they just filmed him playing one of his songs, and it's like this beautiful little place. And they have this above his keyboard. There is a thing that looks like this. It's a visualizer of the notes that he's playing in real time. So it's hooked into the keyboard, and it was built in like the 70s, I think, as like a teaching tool. So like piano teachers would have this thing like on poles up above their piano, and their students could see what they were playing as they were hearing the teacher play.
Okay, interesting.
And I was just sitting there, we were watching a lot of couch time at that point. So sitting, and I watched it, and I loved it so much. I was like, I have to make that thing. I have to figure it out. Like, I have to. And I did. I took several months and put
so
this thing together.
Was this kind of a project where you knew you wanted to make it, but you had to figure out, like, from the ground up how to make it happen?
Yeah, I had very little hardware experience at this time, but it was like the drive to actually finish this thing and like have it in front was so strong that I just like bulldozed through,
make it happen.
And I have to admit too, like, part of it was one, having all that time, right? Like, early pandemic, we were all sitting inside, but also like I spent a fair amount of money getting myself set up to build this. It was kind of like well, I'm not going out anymore, so I have a little bit of extra cash to spend around. And so it
Divert
was
it.
it was it was it was a lot of effort, but it was also like some pretty reckless spending on tools and stuff to
Mhm.
kind of a panic move, to be able to do it. But I don't regret any of it at this point.
And I guess a lot
Um,
of that stuff has become useful in later projects and stuff as well. So it's
yeah,
kind of setting yourself up.
totally, totally.
When you're getting going with these things, software you can generally just sort of have, but
Yeah,
especially with all the open source stuff, but with electronics and physical stuff, you need the tooling, don't you?
totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, my again, very supportive wife was kind of side eyeing me like, oh, we need what? What's that? What's that
we
do?
we need.
Yeah, what does that do? Yes, I've never heard of that. I'm trying to think of it. See if I have any better pictures here.
I have to say the front piece you made there, the orange with the keyboard and
Yeah,
the staves on it, that just looks so well made. Well done
thank
with that.
you,
That's fantastic.
thank you. Yeah, and I'm proud of like how kind of DIY it is. This is literally, it's a piece of translucent white acrylic. And the graphics it's just sticky black vinyl
Mhm.
that we cut with the Cricut maker.
Okay.
So that was one of the tools I kind of splurged on, which, lots of critical things to say about Cricut, but to their credit, it's a pretty affordable for what it does.
Yeah.
Um, and so like literally the graphics where I took a photo of one of the old visualizers, vectorized it, like
Mhm.
literally ran it through an algorithm that vectorized it, and then output the SVG, and then I resized it a bit to fit my acrylic, and then just cut it out with the Cricut, and that's what you're looking at.
Amazing.
It's yeah, it just like we just stuck it on, and then covered it with tape, spray painted it orange.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great.
Amazing.
I'm going to play this video really quick, just
Oh, sure.
so
Yeah.
if folks haven't seen it, there's you can see the lights here. So yeah, the lights represent what's being played through my little sequencer there. Yeah, that's the.
And this is the MIDI interface, right?
Yep.
And
Over.
you could theoretically plug it into just any keyboard. I'm going to mute that. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah,
But,
sorry, I didn't even realize there was sound coming
so
out.
you could, theoretically plug it into any keyboard or similar, and off it goes.
It's actually MIDI over BLE. So there's
Okay.
ESP32 in the back. That's
Right.
so you'd plug your keyboard into the computer, and then do the BLE connection to get it to the thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good. I love it.
Thank you. You can see my recommendations here. You can see what I watched. Look, it's us.
Oh, sorry.
No.
There we are. Yeah, come and join us.
Cool.
Fantastic. So that was your first one. And as you can tell, I'm sure the viewers, I was very musical, related to the audio side of things, and very tactile as well. If we sort of fast forward to your most recent, again, it was, it's a physical thing. You hold it and you interact with it. And again, I love this project. Have you got it there? Do you want to show it off again and have a talk around? It's the strange phone I'm talking about.
Yeah. So it's physically down in the basement. Well, so the secret is there are actually two of them.
Okay.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna load up my projects again on here,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'll show the picture on my Hackaday IO page. So this was very, very cool, and I was super grateful to be asked to do this. So someone from a guy named EJ from the company Quicksilver, if you know the clothing company, they make like surf
Mhm.
oriented things. They apparently did a big collaboration with the latest season of Stranger Things. I think a lot of the wardrobe in the show was done by them, if I'm not mistaken. And if you go on to like Quicksilver's website, you can see they have like a Stranger Things line of clothes that kind of dropped at the same time as the latest season. Quicksilver was going to have a booth at the actual premiere event that they were going to set up to look like the pizza shop from Stranger Things season 4,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is Surfer Boy Pizza. I think if you've seen it, and they reached out to me on Instagram and they were like, "Hey, we would love to have like the phone from the show set up at this booth and have like just as an Easter egg for all the guests of the premiere, have it actually ring and see like if people pick it up and what happens." And they were like, "Could you maybe like find a phone close to this and see what you could do?" And I found, I think, what is the exact model, and I didn't even realize it. They sent me a screenshot of the phone from the show, and it was kind of blurry. It was like zoomed
Mm-hmm.
way in. I didn't realize it was actually from season 4. I hadn't, because it wasn't out yet. They're like, something that looks kind of like this, and I ended up like, I watched the show and I like gasped because I was like, oh my god, I got the
Wait a minute.
exact model kind of by accident.
Well done. Yeah.
But yeah, so what I did was I pretty much gutted it, and I replaced the ringer with a speaker, which is a bummer because I do love the old bell ringers. And then hooked the keypad up to, you can see there's a SparkFun dev board down here. So that's an RP2040 board with like an SD card slot. And then I have a little DAC to get the sound out to the speaker. There's a few other little components in there. You can check out this page. But what happens, what I made the phone do is when you, it'll ring every, I think it was like 2.5 minutes or something. And when you pick it up, it would be you'd hear a pre-recorded message from the Quicksilver folks. Actually recorded all of them themselves, and they were quite funny.
Okay.
And they had like clips from the show, and then some of them were like fake pizza orders. One of them was actually asking for me, which I thought was really cool of them. They were like, "Is Guy there?" Like, I mean, he told us this is his number.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I that was really cool of them.
So just to get this straight, they that you don't have a relationship with them already. They just sort of reached out. They've seen your stuff and they said,
Yeah.
Can you help? Can you do this? That's awesome.
Yeah, which was really very surprising, very cool.
Yeah.
And it worked out. It worked out, and it was. I had messed around with phones before. I've done, like so many of us, I've done like a rotary dial project, and so I felt pretty confident that like I could kind of plot it out in my head, like how I was going to do it, and it was a quick turnaround. I only had like 2 weeks, and I was on a work trip when they asked me, so I only had 1 week, but
so you sourced and did all the fitting of the parts. I think in your video you mentioned that you did this little software beforehand,
yes,
without the hardware.
Yeah, so I prototyped. So I was in New York for work, and I was in this tiny little hotel room, and I like, after the work events, we'd have dinners and happy hour or whatever. I would like be like, all right, I gotta go, and I'd go home and sit in this tiny little hotel room, and I wrote all the code for this sitting there. And I actually did manage to get. There's a great micro center in Brooklyn where they had some of this stuff stocked, so I was able to get a little bit of the hardware while I was down there too.
Awesome.
Yeah,
brilliant. And I think one of the other things you mentioned in that video, that you were cramped on the floor, trying to figure out how to balance all your things on.
Yeah.
And I believe that situation persists.
Yes, here we are. Yeah, this is not a normal thing that I'm doing. I should acknowledge that. Thank you for asking. So this room used to be my office. Before that, it was my sister-in-law's bedroom when she lived here before I married my now wife, and then I moved in. And now we are turning it into a nursery for a baby that we're expecting, which is very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But that means it looks a little different. That means there's not a lot in here right now. And literally, I knew this was happening today, obviously, but literally an hour ago, there were some nice people carrying the couch out of this room. I had forgotten my wife had, we had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and we had booked some folks to come pick up. So like the couch got carried out, and there's a new day bed over here. Nice, beautiful bed. And the mattress showed up today, but it's one of those like mattresses in a box that you're not supposed to sit on it for like 2 days because it needs to inflate evenly all the way. So it's so I'm right in this in between zone where I have nothing to sit on, and my computer right now is literally sitting on a box of newborn clothing that someone will wear
Life-changing
someday. But right now it's a laptop stand.
Perfect. Very good. Congratulations. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you. We're very excited.
So if we sort of take a tangent away from the work in inverted commas and talk about sort of unwinding, escaping, you've recently been on holiday as well. How do you like to get away from things?
That's a good question, because I'm not very good at it.
Yeah. I think it's something that I could be better at as well. Almost
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah. I'm figuring it out, but yeah. So I think because the stuff that I like to do, these I'm going to stop calling them side projects. They've graduated from side projects.
They're real projects.
They're real projects.
Yeah.
But excuse me, there's a lot of overlap with what I do full time for my job, the software job, and what I do for fun. And it's hard. It's hard it's hard for my brain to know the difference sometimes. And I feel like if unchecked, I just work. It just feels like I work a lot, and it's good because I really like it. But I find that I don't realize when I'm burned out or when I'm not doing.
It's very easy, I find as well, to find yourself doing a really technical thing for yourself, for the hobby, even though it's basically like the activity is basically the same as work.
Yeah, totally.
And it's sure, it's a different mindset. There's different pressures, or less pressure, or no pressure sometimes. But as you say, getting away from a computer screen sometimes is really important.
Right. And it's not like my natural inclination. I shut the work stuff, but then I run straight back to the other computer.
Yeah.
But I have learned that I've learned that the types of vacations I need to take are where I physically have to remove myself from this stuff, right? From my tools, from my computer, to the extent that you can do that in 2022.
It's in your pocket.
Yeah. But so something we've done for the past our last two big trips is like just put ourselves in a place where we can't escape. So one trip my wife and I did 2021 was we took a train from Chicago to Los Angeles, which for the folks outside of the United States is like more than half of the width of our country. So that was like a 2.5 day trip with very spotty internet, like through a desert
on a train.
On a train. And that works for me. That basically says like, you are here. It's like the equivalent of a weighted blanket. It's like you get smushed in this little space, and all you have is this window, and it's like,
it is what it is.
I'll turn my brain off. So that works very well for me. And this year, what we did, well, it was two different trips. So I go to a music festival called Bonnaroo every year, which is in Tennessee, which again, if you're not from the US, is like from Boston, it's I think it's about 1,000 miles, which again, if you're not in the US, is X kilometers. Yeah, sorry. I'm not gonna do the conversion. But it's a drive. It's a hell of a drive, right? And so my dad has been coming to it with me for the past few years, which is really fun because it's over Father's Day. And he has an RV. And so we drive, and it's kind of the same thing, like driving through a relatively rural part of this country in a big old bus, again, spotty internet. And that's like how I started my trip was going down there, taking that long drive down there.
Yeah.
But I got back. I told you I was in your time zone. My wife and I went to Lisbon for what was my first time. She had gone as a child and had the absolute best time.
Nice.
It was a baby moon, right? So it's like the
just
the
before,
nice, before things change a bit. And it could not have been better. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm very pleased.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so if we get back to projects, then the big one that you've been working on for a while, and I think you're sort of slowly progressing and continuing with, is your hit clips.
Yes.
I love this project. This is fantastic. I remember them very fondly from my childhood. I never actually owned any, but people at school did, that kind of thing. And yeah, please talk about that.
Yeah, so I started this one, I think, in January. And the way it started was it started much earlier than that. It started probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was at I stayed late at work on a Friday night, and I was talking to some friends, and we were reminiscing. We were like, remember hit clips? Oh, those things were great. A few adult beverages were consumed. I went on eBay, which is what I do after adult beverages. And like a week later, I had a giant bag full of hit clips. And so it was, it was funny. We played with them, and I passed a few around. People clipped them onto their backpack and stuff. But for the most part, like I kind of packed them away after the initial huzzah. But then, fast forward to January of this year, and I'm enjoying my life as a hardware amateur. And I was like, wait, like what's up with hit clips? Like, is that something I can mess with? And I had found a blog post. I think the person's name was Michael Chufo. His blog is Chuf Tech with 2 zeros. I hope I got his name right. But he had at some point, like 10 years ago, had done like a deep dive into the hardware and had figured out the pinout and had figured out pretty close to what, like how the actual audio was being emitted from these things. And so in my mind, I'm like, how did you get that far and then stop? Like, how did you not make your own hit clips? So I saw that as a sign. I was like, I have to do this.
Carried on. Yeah.
I have to figure out how to make. And to be clear, so they are these little music cartridges that held 30 seconds to a minute of a pop song. They sounded terrible. It's like the lowest fidelity digital audio you've ever heard, and they were marketed towards kids. So you were supposed to, as a child, you would like get your whatever song you thought was the coolest, and you had a physical clip that you would put on your you would put on your backpack or whatever and show off to your friends. And then they had all different types of players. So this is one that you would put over your ear to listen to, and then they had little ones that you could clip to your belt. I have a bunch of them. If you watch my initial video on those, I show off a bunch of different ones. There's some pretty wacky ones. But anyway, so I was like, okay, I need to make these cartridges. So I wasn't going to make the players. I wanted to make cartridges that were compatible with all the original players.
So could you just clarify? I don't remember from your video, but you've got cartridge with the song content on it and the player typically with a speaker on it.
Yeah.
What is the interface between the two?
Yeah. It's pretty weird.
Okay.
Because the cartridge is doing a lot of the legwork, right? Like the cartridge is playing the audio into, as like an electronic device, is being powered by the player so that it can play its audio into the player
as an analog signal.
Depends who you ask.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is these cartridges, and that's what's interesting about it, right? It's like, it's interesting to me that the cartridges do so much of the work, because the way they sold these is like, you're going to buy multiple cartridges for every player you have, right? So I figure, like, why would you have the cartridge, which is the thing you're going to need to produce more of, be the thing that does most of the work? But I think it's, my lack of knowledge about cost of electronics and whatever. But
a while ago, those cards you can open and you record your message and you give it to a family member or whatever. A lot of those will actually store audio in the flash as analog values.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a digital value, it's an analog value in the flash.
Right.
And it just plays it out sort of segment by segment. Right. So I wonder if there's something potentially like that going on, where it receives a clock, it just plays out its analog-ish signal, and off you go.
Sorry, I didn't quite get to the actual answer.
Sorry, carry
on. So it is a digital signal, because the cartridges are they don't have DACs in them, right? Like
Mhm.
they're not gonna put those in these they were like $4. They were McDonald's toys, right? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were. So what they do is it is a digital signal that the players uh, amplify as an analog signal. So it's PWM audio,
Right.
but they made it even like they took a shortcut, which is it's PWM audio, but they actually split the two halves of if you think of an audio waveform, going positive voltage to negative voltage. That they split the PWM audio out of two different pins, where the top half of the waveform, anytime the signal's up here, that's PWM on one pin, and anytime it goes
Mhm.
down, that's PWM on the other pin. And
Okay.
the theory is this, according to that Truth Tech blog, and it makes sense to me, is like that corresponds with the amplifier, like a very cheap amplifier circuit in all of the players.
Kind of like an
Um,
H-bridge almost, yeah.
yeah, from what I understand, they tend to have like a push transistor. When the
Mhm.
waveform goes up, the speaker goes out, and a pull transistor, which is going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you do PWM, you alternate between those two,
That's fascinating.
you're going to move the speaker. Yeah, so it's pretty neat, and kind of answers the question of like, why is this doing so much work? It's like, well, because it turns out it's pretty easy work to do.
Okay, so you've taken this along, and you've you found the research, and you've continued it. How far have you got? What are you up to?
So
In
I'll
your videos,
show.
I think you started off with an SD card and a little bit of smarts in the clips.
Yeah, let me. If we go back to my. Sorry, I should be more active with the project here.
That's
So,
okay.
so I did a first version of these, which mostly works.
Oh, sorry.
Um,
There you go.
I had a little bit of trouble making them work consistently. These are my clips. You can see I've chosen some alternate audio sources instead of "Who Let the Dogs Out" by Baha Men, which I think was the top selling hit clip back in the day.
Oh no.
Yeah. Imagine that song, but like in the worst quality you've ever heard. So the one on the left here is an original hit clip.
Okay.
And the one on the right is one of my early prototypes. And so the way the first one worked is I had a simple SAMD microcontroller. It's a SAMD 09, which was recommended by Timon, if you know Timon from
Yep.
all of the internet things we love. He pointed me towards this, and it ended up being like the exact right choice for this first version. So it's one of these, and it's on the back side is an SD card. And what I'm doing is just literally bit banging the data off the SD card and turning it into those two different PWM signals I told you about manually.
Yep.
And then I have, you can see, so this is two sides of the same board. And you can see I have these 6 kind of solder balls here. And what I did to connect those to the actual player, the way the old ones worked, I have this like this daughter board type thing, which just kind of sits on top, and I literally just solder onto those balls. So it's like
Nice.
it's like a three layer board. Yeah, here's a good picture of it. It's a really goofy design, and it's obviously like it's a pain because once I do this, I can't reprogram.
Right. Okay.
Not easily. I can't really reprogram the micro. So, that's okay because I have the SD card with the music on it. So if I want to change the music, I can still do it. But it's still like it's a goofy design. And what I found is that like getting this to line up consistently, if I wanted to make a bunch of these, was really hard. And so it was great for I got the first thing working. I got it. I made a video about it and was very just happy with the idea and wanted to carry it forward. So I decided to iterate on it. And so that's what I'm working on currently. And if we switch to the camera, so I'm very excited about this redesign because I feel like I've taken all this stuff I've learned since since I first filmed it. So this is the
Mhm.
new one, and I'll try to do my best to get it to focus in here. So I use the RP2040 instead of the SAMD because, like, people say RP2040 is probably overkill for this, but guess what? It's available.
Yeah.
And honestly, right
It
now, like,
exists.
there are, I think you can get, I think on the internet, there are probably like 1,000 SAMD09 chips left out there, but they're more expensive than
Yeah.
the RP2040. So
It's amazing what Raspberry Pi have done, isn't it? You know, the fact that
yeah,
they've kept them so well in stock.
yeah. Let's see if we can get the. You want to do it? I have a picture I can load up later.
Okay.
You know what? You've all seen an RP2040 dev board. It's the same thing. You got
That's for them.
the RP2040 down here. This
Yeah.
is the 16 megabytes of flash, and then I have, voltage regulator and a logic level converter, which I don't actually think I need in the long run. But
Okay.
so yeah, so and on the backside, I did something different. So now, because I don't have the SD card anymore, so I decided 16 megabytes is plenty. Let's just use the flash there. People can load a couple songs on. They still have a lot more than 30 to 60 seconds. So I thought that was a win. So now that the back was empty, I could do a more simple, just kind of, I did like the little castellated edges.
And it's
Adapter.
still a two-board design.
It's still a two-board design, and because I wanted to just decouple like the getting this layout right, getting the alignment from the main, like this was a totally different problem to solve. And then this way I can get, I ordered a few different thicknesses to see how they fit and whatnot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
And then I'm very excited. So I got the whole thing running on CircuitPython, which if you watch my videos, I am more and more like swinging into CircuitPython land, even though I'm not a big Python fan in my software world. For a number of reasons. I know it's not the right tool for every job, but given that this is an RP2040 thing and that their support is awesome, I thought, I'd love to give it a try because it would be really nice, especially to get that USB based workflow where you drag, if you've never used CircuitPython, you basically just drag some Python files onto your board, which shows up as a flash drive, and it reboots, and it's
off
you go. And so that combined with like, now I can drop the music files on there too, and I can load those files from Python. And I was like, if I'm going to be giving these to people, selling these, whatever, like that sounds like a great way to let people put their own audio
fantastic.
on. So here's the board. This is a little adapter. It's like test jig / programmer board. And I'm using, sorry, I should have picked a better camera for this, but I'm using flexi pins, the Solder Party Arturo produced these recently. So I take my little hit clip chip there, and I can pop that. Well, it's hard to do with one hand. Hold on one second. I pop it in the correct orientation, and it fits really nicely, nice and snug.
Very good, yeah.
And awesome. Then I can just, I plug the USB into my computer, and it shows up, and I can load, I can load songs on. And I have it configured now where it's like the original hit clips. When you hit play, it just there's one song, it would play, and if you hit it again, it would stop. This I have it so you can load multiple tracks on. Like there's just a folder where you drop all the songs, and every time you hit play and stop, the subsequent play will play the next track. So you can load an arbitrary number of songs on here as long as they fit in that 16 meg limit.
That's amazing. And so what format are the songs in? Are they sort of special binary files that you've got to twist into?
So yes and no. So I was I was hoping to get it to work with plain old like PCM files, so wave files without the wave like header at the top, which is it's literally just the analog values, in a row, and that mostly worked. So I just for storage space and for easy processability, I knock it down to 8-bit audio. So,
Right.
which, if you don't know, 8-bit wave audio doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like a Nintendo. You know, it still sounds like pretty reasonable audio as long as you keep the like the playback frequency high enough.
Sample
The
rate.
bit rate. That's the sample rate has I think has a much higher impact on what you're actually hearing.
Mhm.
So I knock it down to 8-bit, so you just have 0 to 255 representing any sample
-1 to 1 or
along
whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yep. But so the problem with that, well, the reason I wanted to do that was because it's like, oh, that'd be cool because then people can hear the song on, you can play that on a laptop.
Yep.
And then it's the same file back and forth. The problem with it was because of that PC, like the way the PWM works, where it's the two different,
Mhm.
two different PWM pins, one for high values, one for low values. But in practice, the way it works is they're kind of inversed. So it's like the lower half is like 0 to 127, and then the upper half is 255 down to 128. So it's one of the halves.
Interesting.
One of the halves is reversed. Like, yeah, I think it's just how it's internally
Yeah.
wired.
Okay.
Which seems like something that would be fine to deal with in software. And I think if I pushed on it harder, I probably could. But with CircuitPython, obviously Python is going to take up a little more RAM than just doing it kind of bare metal.
Mhm.
And what I was finding was like I couldn't find a good balance between loading stuff in and doing math on it and filling up like that, just doing even just basic like bit shifting and even just a couple of basic math operations was eating into the RAM in a pretty big way. And then
Right.
I would either have to turn garbage collection off and then and then it would overflow inevitably like halfway through the song, or when the garbage collector runs, and this is what I have to look into more, when the garbage collector runs, it would basically kind of pause the operation.
Yeah.
And so I was like, so what I ended up
That's one of
doing,
the things with audio is it's so obvious when you get any kind of jitter in there. It's like you can't not notice it.
right. So what I ended up doing, I was like, oh, I'll just encode the audio so that it's ready to be read in its exact raw format.
Mhm.
And so it's like, yeah, I named the files like .hit clip. But I think it actually is for the best, because at the end of the day, again, if I'm going to give this to people and
Yeah.
give this to like less technical people, I'm going to give them a tool to convert the audio anyways. I'm not going
Yeah.
to say, oh, you need PCM8 formatted.
FFmpeg is over there. Off you go.
Yeah, like, here's a command line thing. Like, no, like at the end of the day, I'm going to make you a tool that you
Yeah.
use to do it. And I'm like, if I'm going to do that, I think it's fine to give them a .hit clip file,
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so that worked out pretty well. It's like the CircuitPython routine is great. It's just like load X number of bytes into a buffer and then hand it off to the PIO, which I'm using the RP2040 PIO to actually drive the PWM. And so like that's all of it. And a little bit of logic around like, oh, press the read, look for a button press, skip to the next track. But it's like it reads like a script. It's the best.
Yeah.
I'm really
That's
happy
awesome.
with it. Yeah.
And so the PIOs, I've not looked into a CircuitPython at all with Raspberry Pis, but the PIO, you've still got the ability to script or program them sort of to this kind of level. That sounds like, which is pretty cool.
Which is awesome. Yeah. It's it's funny. It's basically you write your PIO assembly as a block of text, like as a string, and you're like, here's the program, load it and run it under the hood. But it mostly works. It works on MicroPython. I think they have, you can use it's fully featured. Like PIO is, you just write your PIO assembly as you would as a text block, feed it in. In CircuitPython, there's a few gotchas, like something with like interrupts, because CircuitPython doesn't support I hope I'm right about that, but I'm pretty sure CircuitPython generally doesn't support interrupts.
Okay.
And so there's a few features of the PIO that just won't work with CircuitPython, but it's the same idea. You load in your text block and fire away.
That's awesome. So you're giving a byte, a sample at a time to the PIO, and it's then dealing with PWM on that pin or that pin, and all the clever stuff.
Yeah. So I have a byte loaded in.
Yeah.
I look at the first bit, which tells it top of the waveform or bottom of the waveform.
Yeah.
And then based on that, I jump to either the PWM on this pin, or I jump to the PWM on the other pin.
That's awesome.
That's it.
Very good. Nice. And so the fact that you've got this control over the PWM and what is effectively a kind of audio signal, have you managed to, do you think, improve the quality out of these things? Or is it okay?
Definitely. That was another reason why I decided to move away from the original CMD approach. Was like, I had a ton of noise. If you watch the video, and it's like I can get away with it because they sounded so bad to begin with that I could play it off as part of the charm. But it's pretty noisy with the first iteration. And I was not excited about diving in and figuring out why that was. As lame as that is, like, it was just like, I didn't even really know where to start. I had a hunch. It's because like my PWM wasn't perfectly timed on the old version. I was basically like, I won't get into it, but I wasn't able to get the exact timing with that. And so I have a hunch it was that. On the new one, it sounds way better. Also, I'm able to run it way faster. So the sample rate. The sample rate. I'll try to hold it up after this to see if you can.
I'd love to hear it.
Sample rate's pretty. I think I have it at like 26 kilohertz. Which means the PWM is at a much higher rate. And it's. I think it sounds great. The only thing I noticed, and this actually made me think harder about my old design too, is like I did notice I get a little bit of noise when the CircuitPython code is reading from the flash. And I'm saying to myself, and I think you talked to another guest recently about like when you have audio signals on a PCB, it's like so now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I wonder if I just knew what I was doing in terms of like routing.
It's interesting because it's a system like this where you've got what is effectively digital audio come out of your clip, but then you've got an analog amplifier on the other side. And if you've actually got any bursty current draw on your side, you can really affect the other side, kind of thing.
And I was hoping, because I have the logic level converter in there, and I was kind of I didn't know if I really needed it, because I'm bumping it from the RP2040 is the 3.3 volts, but the hit clips, the original hit clips, use the full voltage of the batteries that power them, so it's like 4.5.
Okay.
And so I was like, probably would be fine at 3. It would just be a little quieter, but I threw it on there because I had room, and then I was like, oh, maybe that'll be good. Like it'll act as a buffer, right? Like it would maybe clean up signal a little bit, but maybe. This is where my I still have a lot to learn with hardware stuff. But the nice thing is I'm able to buffer so much. Like the reads from the flash are so fast, and I have so much more RAM to buffer it in, that I don't need to do them very often. And so like if you listen really close, you hear little ticks now and then, but it's it's very infrequent, and it's I think now I'm very happy with the
fantastic
with the audio quality.
Yeah, very nice. Well done. I love that project.
Thank you.
You willing to hold it up and let us have a hear?
Yeah, let's see.
Listen.
Yeah, so I'll show you my enclosure design too. So these are 3D printed from PCBWay. They do fully transparent prints. I designed it in open SCAD, OpenSCAD, whatever you call it. And basically the PCB has 2 little tabs here on the other side. And so I just kind of clip, pun intended, pop this bad boy in, and it's in there. And then I will.
And so once it's in the case, it's held in the correct position to mate with the player. Yes. But I presume it's now not possible to put it onto your other board for programming. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So you have to pop it out. Fortunately it's pretty easy to get in and out. Like you just kind of pull back one of the sides, and whatever material they printed this in seems appropriate for a little bit of bending. But
Nice.
and asterisk, it's still not quite aligned perfectly. So I have an order in now for what I hope is the final version of these, like the backboard here.
Yeah.
I just got lazy and I was like, oh, I'll just move it a millimeter. That should be fine. And then like, of course it's not. I didn't measure it. Like why would that work? Here, let me see. You have to tell me if you can hear this.
Sure. It's very quiet, but we can hear it.
Not very loud, yeah. Hold on, let me see. No, that's as loud as it gets. It's plenty loud in my ear.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame. Never mind. Yeah. But that does sound pretty good quality. You know, it's very quiet. But
I'm gonna do another video soon, and I'll do a proper recording.
Yeah. I'll look out for it. Fantastic. Yeah. And this is a project you spent quite a bit of time on, and it's obviously a bit of a pet project for you. Yeah. Are you planning? You mentioned giving this to people. Are you planning to make it into a bit of a product to sell it anywhere?
Yes, hoping to. And I actually had a few artists and even like record labels reach out when the first video went out.
That is so cool. Well done.
Thanks. And ask and I feel like I kind of screwed up the timing. I may not. Some of those might not work out, but right. It doesn't matter. I like just the thought of giving it to like that song I was just playing is my friend Brian is a hip hop artist in LA, and as I would just love to send him like 10 to put on his merch table or whatever.
How cool is this? Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, I feel like with now I have this adapter board that I feel like I can coach anyone through. Like, hey, I'll give you this. You load the song on, then it's yours to do whatever. And I've had another project of mine, which we're out of time. I won't talk about it too much, but I have the T9 predictive text keypad. So this is the first product that I've been.
I'm okay to carry on a bit, but if you want to talk about it,
no, if you're good, yeah. So I'll give a short update. So this is if you remember T9 predictive text from like the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. This is just a macro pad with the T9 algorithm baked into the firmware. So again, it's a Circuit Python device. And so I literally just wrote a T9, a pretty rough implementation of T9 in Python, which it runs on the computer too. And then you plug in the USB and you load in a library file with all the words that you want to kind of back your predictive text. And it types on your behalf. It acts like an HID device. Yep. And what it does is as you type, it will replace the word you're typing by injecting backspace characters in the typing. And it does it quickly enough where it looks like, you can type in any program on your computer because it just thinks it's a normal keyboard. And it looks like it's actually swapping the word in real time, but really what it's doing is typing, 3 letters and then backspacing 3 letters really quickly. And so this is this was an experiment for me. This is like, I have a product that I can pretty easily assemble. And also, again, it's Circuit Python. So I feel very confident that I can put it into people's hands and coach them through, customizing it and using it. And yeah, I sold a bunch of these on Etsy and it's been really great. Like it's actually, I've gotten feedback that it's actually helped folks who would otherwise struggle in some situations to type.
Yeah, so this absolutely sort of touches on an accessibility type thing, which is super important. And well done. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I said I've talked about this a few times where I say I feel really guilty because it started out as kind of like well, what if I did this? Like that'd be funny, and people saw it and they're like, oh my gosh, that could actually be useful. And I just wish more of us were in the mindset at the beginning, at the outset, to be like looking for stuff like this. And I definitely am more and more. But yeah, very, very, anytime someone reaches out and says like, hey, like, I think that might help me, I'm super excited to just send them one. So if you're watching and you want one, let me know. I'm glad to help you out. I had someone actually this week reach out. This is like open source doing its thing. It made me very, very happy. But another software developer had recently I think it broke his arm or got surgery or something. It was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can't really type. And he didn't even buy mine, which I'm totally fine with. It's fully open source. It runs, the CircuitPython runs on Adafruit, sells a really nice MacroPad. And he bought that MacroPad and loaded in the software from my GitHub page and just wrote like a thank you, like, hey, I can type this week when I didn't think I could, because I just followed your software. And then he went further and he was like, I've been poking at it and I think I found these bugs, like and he gave me like a really nice bug report.
That's amazing.
Like with repro steps and yeah. So, it goes on. I can patch that and make it better and hopefully help even more people.
I love it when the community works like that. It's just such a nice feeling, all friendly and happy and getting on together.
Yeah. The other thing, if I can mention quick about this, the other awesome thing that happened from this project was, I'm going to forget his name. He's UK based. There's a data scientist. I will make sure we post this in the show notes if that's okay with you.
Sure.
I'll have to dig it up. Hold on. T9. GitHub optimize. I'm going to live Google this and embarrass myself. But did I find it? Nope. I'm going to give it. Okay, I did find it. There you go. I think it's Ben Torvaney. Did I get that? Torvaney. Okay. If heard of him. He saw my video and he does a lot of very cool like data science-y blog posts, mostly focusing on what you folks call football. And like, just analyzing his blog is torvaney.github.io if you want to look at his stuff. But he saw my video and decided, he's like, I wonder how far we could optimize the T9 algorithm, like just as a concept. Because like one thing I mentioned in my video is it's about minimizing the ratio of keys pressed to correct characters typed, right? With as few keys as possible. So he took that to the extreme and was like, okay, first of all, what is the optimal letter layout on each of the keys? Like how do we spread out the 26, English characters? So that, again, you require the least number of button presses to get the most accurate words. And then he figured out like, okay, what's the fewest number of buttons we could get to still have this, like to maintain that ratio. Right. And I read it and I was floored. I was like, that is the coolest possible thing. Like it felt like an alley-oop where it's like it was a piece of work that I would just be super inspired by. Yeah. If I had just read it anywhere, but the fact that like I got to humbly like toss the thing up and the
inspiration up,
dunked it into this very, very cool and easy to understand, and like, I'm obsessed with it. So another instance of just the community doing really, really cool stuff.
I think I found the post, so I'll just pop it in the chat now if anyone's interested, and I will include it in the description after we've done. Yeah,
I actually sent him to. I really hope his first name's Ben. Sorry. Yes, it is. All right, I remember. So I sent him as kind of a bit. I sent him a version that I reprogrammed with his like unhinged optimized layout, right. And I like even printed keycaps with all the different like the letters totally wacky. So that was really fun.
I love it. Yeah. Fantastic. Very good. Well, I think we're just about at time. If you're happy to, anything you want to talk about last things, or should we?
No, I really, no, I really appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you having just doing these interviews. I downloaded, so I told you I was in Lisbon. I downloaded a bunch of your previous ones for my flight. I watched them for the entire flight. Back to Boston, and again, community doing cool stuff. Like I'm
Well, I'm
As-
delighted
as-
you enjoyed, and thank you so much for coming. It's
Yeah.
been great to have you on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. As you can tell, I love yapping about this stuff. So.
Oh yes. Great. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Next week we'll be talking with Jason Kuhn about LEDs and Fibonacci sequences. But for now, thank you, Guy, and goodbye.
Thank you.